I'm interested in what you mentioned about getting repeat work. I mean, that's something that's been very compelling for me. I think a lot of people don't realize that most consulting comes from the easiest work to win is work that you already have with an existing client because they know what you've done. If you serve them well, it's really easy to upsell or to expand scope. How do you guys approach getting new clients? That to me is something that um, is usually a little more difficult than it seems, or for some people, it just happens really naturally through in network or whatever it might be. But I'm interested in what your guys' journey has been with that.
It's kind of this funny thing, and that when you're running a company, or really just when you're part of a company that you are excited to be a part of, where you like the work, where you find it fun, you talk about it a lot. Like people ask you, what do you do? And you're like, oh, I run a data science consulting company. And then they like ask you questions. It just kind of goes from there. So in fact, like our lead investor, I met him at my friend's wedding. Like he asked him what he did, and he's like, "Oh, I run an insurance company." And I was like, "Oh, that sounds so cool. Like, what kind?" He's like, "Flood insurance." I was like, "Oh," I was like, "Do you work with like hydrography data? Like river data? Do you work with like pluvial data, like flood data, like elevation data, all this modeling?" He's like, "No, not yet, but we've been meeting to. We don't have the resources to do it in that specific way. We want to apply more ML to it, but we don't have any ML engineers. Like we have software engineers." And I'm like, "Oh, I have some ideas. What about doing it this way?" And it was just a very organic conversation, whereas really just me nerding out with this guy, right? And the conversation is kind of flowing well, but like if the topics align, and given how much companies need data science nowadays, it just evolves from there. Like it's it's kind of this kind of natural piece. We haven't really done outbound marketing. Like we haven't like done cold calls because we've just worked with people in the past, and there's a lot of kind of interest in what we're doing and the model we have and like how we can apply it. It's also just it is a good time to be in data science, because I think people are realizing that like data science is not this newfangled thing anymore. It is a necessity to stay competitive. It's like back in the .com boom, having a website. Like companies, like at one point it was newfangled, but it was like, if you don't have a website, you're not going to succeed as a company. Whatever the company was, retail doesn't matter. And so I feel like it makes it a lot easier for people to just want to learn more about what we do, want to learn more about data science. And given Glebe and I's like vast kind of past experience working like in different industries and in different ways and with different tech, we can speak to a lot of it.
Many people would be surprised at how many opportunities there are for data science projects or data work. I mean, just as you had mentioned, every single company likely has some data problem, whether they know it or not. And just being able to talk about the stuff you're doing, ask good questions about what other people are doing, what types of problems they have, any of these types of things. Like you can find opportunities in the weirdest places, right? When I was in Chicago, one of the first like contract gigs I did, there was this company called Zcroot. And I was just really interested in their work because what they were doing was aggregating a ton of data on high school football players. And they were just sending that or sharing that with colleges. And they have the data. I was just talked with the CEO. He's actually a good friend of mine now. And I got to know him, and we eventually started talking. I was like, "What do you do with this data? What are the problems you're trying to solve?" And I ended up doing some contracting work to build some models for them to figure out based on what like based on their Twitter data and a bunch of these other things, which of their schools that they had offers from, which they were most likely to commit to, right? And it just came organically out of me having some conversations with this guy because I was interested in what they were doing. I didn't plan to go in doing any work or any of these types of things, but if you talk to people about their problems and you happen to be the person that can also solve their problems, they'll probably work with you. It's very interesting.
Exactly. Yeah.
If you're talking to a guy about how your toilet's broken and they happen to be a plumber, right? Like
It's
they're the they're
yeah,
the first person you know around it, right?